Sorry. Good morning. My name is Matt Jasmine, hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Maribel Hanson is the clerk for the hearing. Public Works inspectors and staff, Jessica Salami with the Bureau of Street Use and Mapping, Alejandro DeCalvo, and Shauna Gates will be presenting the orders. This hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available after through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there's no sign-in sheet, so you'll receive information about the results from this hearing. Please send an email to the address listed in the hearing notice. The public hearing is being held to consider 3 items. Hearing order 21-1058 to consider notice of violation 082024-055-003 for excavation without a street improvement permit. Hearing order 211070 to consider the violation notice of violation for unpermitted vending and no permit displayed. And finally, hearing order 211074. This supersedes order 211011 and 211073 to consider Sunnydale Hope SF Phase 3 project, requests for exemptions and deferrals to subdivision regulations, subdivision code, and tentative map condition approval. My job as the hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director. The Director will make the final determinations. When the Director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them. The hearing will proceed as follows for the hearing items. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. Then I will allow first the property owner or appellant in this case, to speak. Then any members of the public or witnesses who'd like to speak. Then we'll go back to the department to address any comments that have been raised. And finally, we'll allow the appellant to speak once again if they have any rebuttals. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers. When you hear the first bell, if we're using a bell, it means that the speaker has 30 seconds left to speak. If you're a party to any of the cases today, we will call on you to speak. If you'd like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let us know. If you're a member of the public who would like to speak, wait for me or the hearing officer to call for public comment. Then use the Zoom raise your hand feature. If you are on a computer, if you're not on a computer, you will need to dial 9 to join the queue. When it's your turn to speak, I will call on you. You may need to dial star six to unmute yourself. And my apologies, it's star 9 to join the queue if you're on a phone. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of the hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask. After all comments are completed, I'll close the item. Before we consider the hearing items, the hearing is open for public comment. Members of the public may address the hearing officer on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Are there any public comments at this time? If there are no public comments, we'll close the public comment item.
I'll confirm there are no hands raised.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to order 211058. Inspector Jessica Salome, would you present the hearing order?
Give me 1 second to share my screen here. Good morning, my name is Jessica Salome. I'm Inspection Supervisor for Public Works. This is for Public Works Order number 211058 for the location of 587 Second Avenue. Notice of violation number 082024-055-003. On Thursday, August 15th, 2024, around 10:30 a.m., Infinity Plumbing and Router submitted an application for an excavation permit via email. The application did not indicate the work was an emergency. On Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, at 11:43 a.m., the inspector responded to a complaint regarding construction work occurring at 587 Second Avenue. Upon arrival, the inspector found excavation work was occurring and issued a notice of violation to Infinity Plumbing and Router for excavating without a permit for $1,000. On Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, around 1:15 p.m., Infinity Plumbing and Router emailed the permit staff to follow up on their application, but did not state that the situation was an emergency. On Monday, August 26th, 2024, around 8:30 a.m., permit number 24E-00599 was approved. The application for general excavation specified a minimum of 10 business days for processing, and permit 24E-00599 was approved within this time frame. These are emails between the permit staff and Infinity. A copy of the appeal letter. A copy of the notice of violation posted. Copy of the work and the original photos of the work being performed. The inspection photos, copy of the activity log from the permit. Copy of the invoice. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Now I'll ask the appellant for a comment.
Please raise your hand if you're the appellant and would like to speak. Okay, you have 3 minutes to speak, Mr. Perez.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Perez. And yeah, previous times, we always apply for this excavation permit. It doesn't take that long, usually 3 to 5 business day. And I think it was my mistake that didn't put this was an emergency. But we tried to contact and a few times, but haven't get a response. This time it take longer than usually. And yeah, I just want to mention that this was an emergency, and that's why we start early, because we have tenants that want to use the bathroom and having able to use it. And usually when I do this work, the property owner goes to the city and asks for permit, that's emergency permit, and we can start right away. But in this case, the permit wasn't approved when we start, and we try to figure it out if is there a better way to communicate for this to happen when it's an emergency? Can we get a permit right away, or we have to say in the email that this is an emergency that we need to start because we have tenants and they want to use the bathroom. And that's all for this project.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate that. Are there any other public comments? Again, raise your hand to make a comment, or if dialing by phone, press *9.
Officer Jasmine, at this time, I do not see any hands up in regards to this order.
Thank you. Inspector Salami, any other comments you'd like to make?
Nothing for me.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no other comments from the inspector or the appellant, I will close the item and make my recommendations to the director. Can you confirm that there are no other requests to comment? Clerk Hanson.
Yes, I can confirm that there are no hands raised requesting comments.
Well, thank you, Inspector Salami and Mr. Perez. I'll make my recommendations within a week to the director. Then we'll move on to order 211070. I ask that Alejandro De Calvo present the order.
Good morning, everybody. So I am presenting Public Works Order number 211070 regarding an NOV that was issued to Alex Vishnevsky on, just a second. Okay. On Wednesday, September 25th. Public Works inspectors approached the permitted street vendor, Alex Vishnevsky, at 3232 24th Street. Upon arrival, the inspectors found the display was not in compliance for a non-compliant display / occupancy and exceeding the maximum display footprint of 4 feet by 8 feet. Mr. Vishnevsky has had multiple verbal warnings in the past concerning the need to display a valid permit and for exceeding the scope of allowable occupancy. Mr. Vishnevsky was also issued a notice of correction 072523-007-001 for selling prescription medicines that were not his. Mr. Vishnevsky was subsequently issued notice of violation 051524-FK-001 for unpermitted vending and vending without a permit at the Northeast BART Plaza of 24th Street and Mission Street. This is the permit for Mr. Vishnevsky, showing that all permittees are to abide by the terms of Article 5.9 of the Public Works Code and Public Works Order 206,887. Here's a photo of the notice of violation given to Mr. Vishnevsky on the 25th of September. Photos of the notice of correction and the prescription medication from 72523. Here is the subsequent notice of violation that Mr. Vishnevsky was issued for unpermitted vending on May 15th, 2024. Here's a photo showing a non-compliant display in that it is exceeding the maximum footprint of 4 feet by 8 feet, and also showing no permit is displayed. Highlighted is Public Works Article 5.9-3B. A vendor shall prominently display a valid vendor permit that corresponds with the vendor's business activity while vending in accordance with this Article 5.9. Public Works Order 206887, Section C. Vendors must clearly display a copy of the credentials, including business registration and vending permit, while actively engaged in vending in the public right of way. And here is the amendment of July 1st, 2022 vending regulations adopted pursuant to Public Works Code, Article 5.9. And it shows the maximum footprint of 4 feet by 8 feet. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Clerk Hansen, is the appellant available for comment?
Yeah, Mr. Vincheski, would you like to speak? Please raise your hand. Okay, you have
Hello?
3 minutes. Yes, you have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll give you a 30-second warning at the. Go ahead.
Hearing officer, good morning.
Good
My
morning.
name is Alex Wisniewski. I've been permitted before the Public Works took over. I've been on the 23rd admission at the beginning, and then the band came ahead, and the Public Works moved me to 24th Street across Cypress Street. When Alejandro approached me on September 25th to issue me a violation, first of all, on my violation, it's the wrong address. They stated 24 and Kansas Street, which I'm not even there. The violation at the time Alejandro tried to give it to me, I did presented my permit. It was available, is actually not as a paper, which I usually have, but it was presented to him on my phone, which that's how he wrote me a violation. So my permit and my business registration was available at that time. I also, Alejandro stated to me that there is a new rule, which is 4 by 8, needs to be a size of my location area. Those rules was not presented to me at the time of the permit. Those rules were developed for, and it's not also available on the website. I did not see it. I went to the DPW website. And we also talked to Kimberly Boosters just about 2 weeks ago, and she said those rules were not presented to us. So she did print it for us that this was available internally, not on the website. So, and those rules were stated for Mission Street due to band, but it was not available or if you're not selling on the Mission Street. So I'm contesting those 2 violations. I also have pictures available of the vendors who are selling next to me. I would like to present them to you because when I try to present the pictures to the officer or inspector, they said those pictures are not valid, which I feel it is because they never questioned those people except they.
30-minute warning, sir.
Yes,
I mean, 30 seconds.
Correct. I only feel like I'm only being targeted myself instead of other people being and nobody, I have never seen a single person, even the people that's selling next to me, displaying the permit, and they never been questioned. So I've been disputed my violation.
Thank you.
And can I share my pictures too or not?
Your speaking time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd ask Mr. DeCalvo, are there any clarifications you'd like to make at this time to what was presented by Mr. Vishnevsky?
There is not.
Mr. Vishnevsky, I know you have some photos you want to present. Is that something we can coordinate? Clerk Hanson? Or
Yes,
should
so he
or should he submit
sh-
those separately?
he needs to submit those separately to Mr. DeCalvo.
I did submit it to Mr. DeCalvo. I sent the pictures to him.
Okay, well, we can reach out to Mr. DeCalvo and get the pictures, but I appreciate your testimony. Now the item is open for public comment. Please raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment on this hearing order. If you're dialing by phone, press *9. Clerk
At
Hanson?
this
I'm sorry.
at this time, I do not see any hands raised. Officer Jasmine.
Thank you. Seeing no public comment, I'll now close the hearing order. We'll move on to hearing order 211074. Inspector staff member Shauna Gates, would you please present the hearing order?
Yes, good morning. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning. My name is Shauna Gates. I work with the Infrastructure Task Force here at Public Works. Today I'm presenting a request for exceptions and deferrals that was submitted by the subdivider of the Sunnydale Hope SF project. The Hope SF Sunnydale project is contemplated to be completed in 10 phases, as shown on this map, which was from the infrastructure plan. The phase that is currently being designed and we've received an application for a final subdivision map for is highlighted in red. We refer to that as the infrastructure phase 1B, 1C. Just a little background on why an exception from subdivision regulations is needed for the requested exceptions and deferrals. There's 3 reasons. One is because the subdivider is requesting deferral of tentative map conditions of approval compliance. So typically the compliance is required to be complete prior to the city approving a final map. There's 2 conditions of approval that are set at the tentative map stage when the entire master project is approved. And those conditions of approval must be met at each final map stage. So the requested deferrals will go into in a bit more detail on the following slides. But, and I'll read here an excerpt from the subdivision regulations that the Director of Public Works shall review the deferred materials submittal. And if previously deferred information affects the prior conditions of approval, the Director of Public Works reserves the right to impose reasonable conditions necessary for the development and to refine, adjust, supplement, modify, and or delete the conditions of approval to the extent consistent with the earlier approval. So the subdivision regulations provide provisions for the Director of Public Works to allow for deferred compliance or modification of the conditions of approval that were set at the tentative map stage. The 2 other reasons that an exception from subdivision regulations is needed. one is, or number two is that there are 3 specific exceptions to the subdivision regulation requirements. So these are more technical in nature, which I'll go into in the following slides. And the third reason is because the subdivider is requesting to defer completing a portion of the required infrastructure past what we call a notice of completion and formal acceptance of improvements. So there's some elements of infrastructure that they're requesting to defer beyond that timeframe. So just how does the department evaluate requests? The subdivision regulations refer to us to section 1712 of the subdivision code. The subdivision code then stipulates that the director reviews the application by the subdivider and consultation with the requirements of the Subdivision Map Act, and may authorize exceptions, waivers, or deferrals of any of the requirements set forth in the code or regulations. But it does provide that the director must find the following are true, that the application of these codes and regulations would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships, that the granting of the exception and waiver or deferral would not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property in the area in which the property is situated, that the granting of the exception, waiver, or deferral is not contrary to the project documents or city regulations, and that they're not in violation of the Subdivision Map Act. So Public Works staff has reviewed with the city attorney and confirmed that the 4 above requirements have been met for the requested exceptions being presented today. So here's just a site map. Again, the infrastructure phase 1B, 1C is shown here. There's 3 specific design related exceptions, which I'll discuss on the following slides, which are, I can go back to this location map if needed. The first specific exception is the subdivision regulations require use of VCP or vitrified clay pipe. The subdivider is requesting authorization to use high density polyethylene or HDPE pipe for combined sewer systems. SFPUC is the future owner of the facility. They've concurred and support approval of the requested exception. And so the Public Works staff recommends director approval of this exception. The second exception is the subdivision regulations allow for but require fire department approval of any street grades that are greater than 14% or less than 17%. So we've consulted with the fire department and obtained their concurrence that for this one section of street in which the street grade is greater than 14%, fire department approves or recommends approval of the exception to allow for the street grade as designed. But we recommend a conditional approval. I'm going to switch back 2 slides here to show you the location on the lower section. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor,
Yes.
but there's a section here of roadway that is going to be reconstructed in a future phase because, again, at each phase that's constructed, the developer has to construct these. We kind of call them connector roads to connect the permanent street grid that's being constructed back to the existing grid, because each phase has to be self-sustaining, and the phase development is required to mitigate for displacement of current residents. So the phase is closed, the streets are reconstructed, and then the new street grid has to be connected back to the old one. So this portion of street here is designed in excess of 14% street grade, but the future alignment fire department is requiring to be with under the 14%. So that's the condition that we've stated here, that when Blythedale Avenue is designed and reconstructed in its permanent alignment, that the slopes will be reviewed at that time with the street improvement permit design and final map application. The third exception is just allowing the department to make allow other minor exceptions to the subdivision regulations as we proceed in finalizing the street improvement permit design. There are no other exceptions to the subdivision regulations we are foreseeing at this time, but this is a kind of a contingency approval to enable staff in consultation with affected city departments to make that recommendation. There's also several deferrals. So as I mentioned on the prior slide, one of the conditions on the tentative map required that sidewalk legislation be approved prior to issuance of a street improvement permit. Typically, sidewalk legislation is not completed until the improvements are completed and offered to the Board of Supervisors for acceptance. And so staff recommends approval of this requested deferral. The second request for deferral, the developer is requesting here. I'm going to also, sorry if I'm making everyone dizzy, but on the northern part of the site here, there's a portion of landscaping and pedestrian streetlights that are in conflict with the Block 9 vertical construction here. And so the developer is requesting for deferral of those portions of work that they believe if they install with the rest of the improvements will get damaged. And so we've consulted in terms of the pedestrian lights with SFPUC, and they've given their concurrence that they agree that those lights can be deferred to be installed at a later date, subject to some conditions here, which I'll read. So we recommend that the director conditionally approve, subject to the following conditions: that the director holds adequate security for all deferred work, that the subdivider has to maintain temporary lights and indemnify and hold harmless the city for any claims related to lighting levels. So in the event they do not maintain the lights properly and there's a trip and fall or a hazard that can be pointed back to insufficient lighting, that the city would be held harmless for that. And then that final inspections would be coordinated once the work is complete, that they would warranty the work as they would the rest of the project. And that they would complete the deferred improvements before that vertical building applies for a TCO, or temporary certificate of occupancy. Third deferral here is that there are 3 trees that the developer would also request, sort of in that same general area, and for the same vertical developer, Block 9, that they're requesting to defer the installation of these until closer to TCO of the building, so that they're not damaged in the course of vertical construction. And so staff recommends director conditional approval subject to these conditions: that the as-built reflect that the trees are to be installed in this phase, that the director would retain adequate security for the deferred work, and then the same 3 is the last slide, that final inspections would be conducted, that the warranty would be complete and provided for the deferred work, and that the trees would be installed prior to TCO. And the last deferral being requested is, so with the final map, if the developer has not completed the required improvements, they're required to enter into an agreement with the city called a public improvement agreement. And part of that agreement is an attachment with an operations and maintenance matrix that specifies for each facility being constructed what is the future entity that would own and maintain. There's still some elements that have not been completely agreed to between city agencies and the developer that we are still working to finalize. And so we need additional time to finalize this. We've consulted with the city attorney, who is the entity that stipulated the original condition of approval, and obtained their concurrence that we defer the completion of the O&M matrix until the notice of completion for the phase. And so before the developer can obtain a notice of completion and proceed towards formal acceptance of the improvements, that the O&M matrix needs to be finalized. So staff recommends approval of this deferral. And that is the end of my presentation. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Clerk Hansen, would this hearing order have any public comment?
You can welcome public comment, and at this time, I do not see any hands raised for public comment. If you would like to make any comments, please, regarding this order, please raise your hand. I do not see any hands raised at this time, Officer Jasmine.
Thank you. I just have one question really quickly. Can you explain the reason for the request to swap the BCP pipe for the HDPE pipe for the combined sewer? Just curious.
Good question. I think that when they did their flow analysis, the pipe size that they were coming up with was not like a readily available size, and so all of the pipes would have had to be upsized quite a bit, and so the HDPE was just a clear choice in being able to mitigate that. It's not my area of expertise, so I'm happy to consult our hydraulic engineers and get you a more thorough response if that's if you need that. But that's my high level understanding.
No, just curious. I think I read somewhere in the information that you posted to our shared drive that this has been done in other locations in the city.
Yeah, this is the third infrastructure phase, and it's been approved and used for all three phases so far. This is the third phase that it would be approved for. And so I think also when it was approved for the first phase, that PUC expressed the desire that it be used for all future phases so that there's consistency within the development. And so that's another just reason for it, is they want consistency throughout the phases. But it's their pipes, so if they're okay with the use of the material, then defer to their review, really.
Okay, if there are no other comments from the public, then I'll close this item.
I will confirm that there are no public comment hands raised for 211074.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? This is reserved for people who may have come late and have not had a chance to speak during this hearing. Thank you for confirming that, so we can move on.
Confirmed. There are no hands raised at this time.
Thanks. All right. With that, this hearing is closed. I will make my recommendations to the director.
Thank you. I will now stop the recording.